Good morning and welcome to our continuing series, Explorations in Savitri, with our brother Alok. We are continuing Book 2, the Book of the Traveller of the Worlds, Canto 10, Kingdoms and Godheads of the Little Mind, page 250, about two-thirds of the way down.
And we are with the rational mind. So it's very interesting that rational mind on one side releases the wings of tradition. So it breaks open the fetters which tie down to fixed forms and formulas by questioning them. The purpose of rational mind to question everything. It doesn't regard or accept anything as sacred, fixed forever. On the other hand, it clips the wings of the imaginative mind, the vital mind. So it releases us from the fetters of tradition. Now, this is a subtle thing, but it's important to understand that basically truth has these two sides, or rather three aspects. Dharma, as it is called. One is the eternal, and obviously the eternal is unchanging, the unchangeable. You can't. You can't meddle with it. The other is its expression, its manifestation, the forms it takes, which is very important for all of us because it's what impels us further on. Now, these forms are bound to change. You can't keep them forever. They have a certain context, they emerge in a certain kind of, as a result of certain kind of practice, which has taken us one step closer to truth. But if we regard that that's the end of the journey, then we get stuck. Then there is another problem which yesterday we were discussing when we spoke about religion and reason, etc. That when you fix something into very tight, rigid formula, then you refuse the evolutionary impulsion. So in Hindu tradition, the good part is that the evolutionary impulsion is maintained by the masters, by this thing that the master's word is greater than the scripture. So you have Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Sri Guru Venama. It's a very beautiful, that whatever it be, whatever anyone else may have said, whatever is the word of the tradition, the scripture, the formula, but the word of the master, word of the Guru supersedes it. It's inbuilt. So there is a very interesting story about this, quite a number of them. One I have already recounted, how our Mayadi's father, who was a Jain by birth and wrote the Rishabh Chand, who wrote this wonderful book, and he was given the task of killing the bugs inside the cot, and he found it very difficult.
He's a giant.
He wrote to Sri Aurobindo, and Sri Aurobindo's one-line reply: whatever work mother gives you is meant for your progress. Same with Dyuman Bhai, same with Ravindraji. They had to handle eggs. Now you see, mother's so many practical ways, she broke free from the traditional mindset which fixes God into a formula. Now definitely vegetarianism is better than non-vegetarian. You don't have to be religious or spiritual to understand this. It's just simple medical fact which one day or the other you realize it. But you can't reduce spirituality to a kitchen spirituality. Even Swami Vivekananda said that if somebody is a vegetarian, he is more spiritual. That you cannot, that inference you cannot. This reason will tell us that yes, it's good, but it doesn't mean. There are people who don't believe at all in anything higher and are vegetarian.
And there was mother giving someone with her left hand.
Yes.
That was a shock.
Yeah, that how can you give something with the left hand? She said, why not? So this, the more we crystallize truth into fixed formula, and then the next step comes an exclusive formula. That my formula is the only formula, if not the best formula. And that way we finish truth which is manifesting each moment in a unique way. So whenever in religion you have fixed rules, prescriptions, do's and don'ts, like now it is happening in everywhere. Now in Sabrimala this is going on, and everywhere this is going on. What we have to understand it is not just in terms of a religious background, because traditions also evolve and they should evolve, but in terms of more rational thinking or in the context in which we live. But the fundamental thing about the sacredness of the shrine, that cannot be questioned, because that's a question of a way of relating to the divine being. That is each one's unique prerogative. So this is why reason comes, and reason in certain sense demolishes religion. That's why we see this antagonism. Though now a new trend is coming, which is very good, because what it demolishes is not, it cannot demolish the spirit. It demolishes the form in which the spirit is captured. So many of these do's and don'ts, they are going away. For example, a Brahmin used to wear a janev. I'm a Brahmin by birth, used to wear a janev. Now when you grow up, you rationally question this. So you are told that, well, it's a sign of something else, a symbol. You have become a dvij, twice born. So twice born means you are initiated into the spiritual life. So first of all, if you go by that logic, that means anyone who is initiated into spiritual life becomes a Brahmin. It doesn't matter who he is. And mother did say, all my children are Brahmins. It means that. Secondly, once you are initiated, you don't have to wear it to show it to anyone. You are what you are inside. Now, in a certain age, it was necessary because of many things. There were external marks required. So there was a lot of meaning in that. So the moment you saw a Brahmin, you understood from a distance. So you don't have to talk to him, know his surname and everything. You knew, okay, this is a fellow who is basically a seeker after knowledge. So let's not meddle with him, let's not disturb him. Shrap de dega pata nahi kya, He is on his own way. So when a Brahmin asked for bhiksha, you understood he is not a beggar by, let's say, default. He has given his life to acquiring knowledge by tapasya. So he has no time to engage in worldly activities to gain money. So the society supported him. So that way these markers were kind of help. But when you say this is the mark of the Brahmin alone, then it's meaningless. So today's generation questions it and cuts it off, because you are not living in that context. So this is the whole argument, and reason is only can break the form. When it tries to touch the spirit, it finds its limitations. So any right thinking, rational human being will become an agnostic if he doesn't want to go beyond reason. He will say, well, I don't know. There is no way I can know by the data of the senses and by rational argument whether God exists or doesn't exist. Now he is ready for the next step. So yogi will say, okay, now you want to see and experience, come, I'll take you by hand. So that is how the curve of reason in which we are presently.
One thing about the guru being greater than the scripture.
Yes.
It is said that even the mistakes of the guru are sacred.
Absolutely, because if you even where the mistakes are, let's say, people often say, oh, he is a human instrument, doesn't matter. The attitude that with which we have to take it will help us to progress. That famous story of someone who some argument or some problem took place between two sadhaks, and mother took a decision. She said, Mr. X, he has to just go away, leave the ashram and go. So he was very annoyed. Means he was very disturbed, and he thought that injustice has been done to me. So he goes to Nalnida and tells him that, mother has not heard me. I have not done anything like that. And Nalnida told him, look, when mother takes a decision, you take it in the spirit that she is the divine mother, and you can't judge her by the human mind, and that is the best way to take it. Because what she has foreseen in her, she may have seen a rebellious attitude who is always wanting justice, who doesn't aspire for grace, and this may be her way of saying that if you want justice, go out in the world. I'm just giving an example.
But she sent others out,
Yeah.
and they made a progress.
And they made a progress. So after 10 years, this person comes and says that this was the best advice you gave me, because staying here, I was all the time looking at this and that, and when I went out, I realized. So this tendency of the human mind to think linearly is very different from the way divine looks at things, which is globally. Because the divine does things for us keeping 10 lives ahead. In fact, our inevitable destiny ahead. And that's what I keep reminding people when they try to judge the ashram school, etc. That look, one thing you don't forget. This is the Divine Mother's creation. This is not a human creation. It does not run according to human measures, human yardsticks, human standards. And what she has foreseen, what she is doing, all that we can say is, Mother, we don't know, give us the vision and the sight. That is a logical aspiration.
And she says Orville may take centuries.
Centuries, even about ashram schools. He said,
Yeah.
I am sure, absolutely sure, that one day it will become the seat of highest learning upon earth.
Yes.
And then she says, you may doubt, I may or may not be there. She goes on to say, you may even doubt about it. It may take hundreds of years. But it is bound to happen. Now look at the power of this statement. She has foreseen. So she has done whatever needs to be done from the occult way. She is a divine mother. She doesn't provide only for food and material arrangement. So she has foreseen everything. That's how I feel even about the ashram. People often say,
Absolutely.
I said, even human beings, when they so-called leave their body, they provide for 2 generations, all sensible human beings who have some extra money. Otherwise, they try, however poor a man is, he will say, at least my children should be, taken care of. This is where does this impulse come from? Originally from the divine. And if you look around in Srishti, creation, you see that the divine has arranged even for the meanest and humblest of creature that be looked after and provided for. Now here, if she has initiated a project, she has made sure that not only externally but inwardly, we will be provided for in every way so that those who want to reach the goal, they will be facilitated. Of course, those who don't want, have no aspiration, nothing can be done about it. That's the human side of it.
But if Mother says it, it will be.
It will be. So that is how. So there is a office of reason and there is the limit of reason. And now we have the being of reason. All these images that Sri Aurobindo is describing, they are not just picturesque images, but they are realities, like the gods of the Vedas. They are real. So he is describing this image. There the low bent and mighty figure sits, page 250, right?
Yes.
Bowed under the arc lamps of her factory home. This brain. Amid the clatter and ringing of her tools. A rigorous stare in her creative eyes, coercing the plastic stuff of cosmic mind, she sets the hard inventions of her brain in a pattern of eternal fixity, indifferent to the cosmic dumb demand, unconscious of 2 close realities of the unspoken thought, the voiceless heart. She leans to forge her credos and iron codes and metal structures to imprison life and mechanic models of all things that are. Now this is interesting that reason itself ends up codifying. So reason is meant to, question, but it builds its own codes. There was a time when people didn't know where to put psychology. I don't know whether now it's humanities, right? You go to science stream, there is no psychology because psychology, you can't study scientifically. If you go to art stream, it's not. It's in humanity, something unique. Scientists take up psychology and do it their own way, and others take it in their own way. But science also ends up by its own metal structure. This is how it will be. The issue about life being on other planets. Sometimes I wonder, they are great scientists who have done wonderful work. But I wonder why a simple argument they are not able to see. The argument is when we say life on other planet exists or not, we are extrapolating the way life is organized here, which is carbon based. But life can be based in other ways.
Absolutely.
So this idea that whether life could be, could have been, could not have been, you can't extrapolate based on life here, which has evolved under a certain set of circumstances. We use breathing through the breathing frame. But there are creatures who don't need this. So this tendency, not only metal structures outside, but everything we see as fixed structures and form without which it could not be. Now science is changing. Modern medicine says that, if somebody has stroke, you can reroute the nerves and take control, which is what they should have thought. Plasticities of the cosmic mind.
Yes.
And it came because they discovered that actually people who are paralyzed, there are other parts of the brain that can actually take over. I have,
You saw the video.
Niratadi, right now. Right side paralysis, she couldn't speak,
Yes,
and
yes,
she's
yes.
picking up. Light when she had a paralysis, we spoke about it, how mother came and in her vision and said, "You feed me with the paralyzed hand." And she said, "This paralyzed, no, you feed me." So she's trying, and then eventually she got back the function. So this idea that things are fixed, we have to get rid of that. But reason has this tendency that it finds a process, then fixes it. For the world seen, she weaves a world conceived. Which means that as things are, so they would be everywhere. In rational religion, the reason why rationalists sometimes don't believe in God, because they believe highest that man can achieve is morality. When they look around the world, they find there is evil. So God has to be moral, and if world and creation and nature you don't see morality at play, so you say that God doesn't exist. So sometimes when I have this discussion, I ask them that who made you believe that God is moral? What if he is amoral? It need not be moral or immoral, he may be amoral. He has his own ways of working. Morality is human conception, and it has its place in evolution of society, but it's not the highest truth. Nature is amoral. That's why many people can't understand the way of Krishna on Kurukshetra. How could he lead to massacre of?
Yeah.
So this idea, reason has this tendency to extrapolate. So based on what it understands and sees, it starts drawing conclusions which are meaningless.
It weaves it.
It weaves it. She spins in stiff but unsubstantial lines. This is paradox.
Yeah.
Something unsubstantial cannot be stiff. But ideas, views, opinions are held rigidly. Stiff but unsubstantial lines. Her gossamer word webs of abstract thought, like a cobweb.
Great line.
Great line. And then she captures God in that formula.
Yeah.
Anything, everything, life, nature. It sets a pattern of thought and captures it. Her segment systems of the infinite. So this is how everything else will be, because you have seen this segment. But infinite is infinite, by its nature free. Her theodicies and cosmogonic charts. So that's what, even when it talks about religion or the origin of world, about higher beings, it extrapolates based on the little arc of vision. So this is the common street psychology or street philosophy. People say, no, I have seen my life. Good things have never happened in my life, therefore God is cruel or it doesn't exist. Now, Shubindu would say, ask the person, as he does in Life Divine, first of all, how do you define good thing? How do you know that poverty is not a good thing and richness is necessarily a good thing? It's a premise, but it's just taken for granted.
Yes.
Said, if I met with failure and poverty, that means God is cruel. Maybe God is kind. What if, Shubindu says that, what if failure suits his purpose best?
Yes. Yes.
Maybe failure will awaken a deep aspiration. It will be like a tapasya of sorts. Suffering is called as a unconscious tapasya in the Vedas. It prepares the patra. So, but it fixes. No, it cannot be like this. And myths by which she explains the inexplicable. At will she spaces in thin air of mind, like maps in the schoolhouse of intellect hung. You know that famous even chart by A.B. Purani. All the planes.
Oh yes, yes, yes.
Some people are very fond of it. So they asked me. I said, see, first of all, it's creating in 2 dimensions what doesn't exist in 2 dimensions or even 3 dimensions. It's in the 4th dimension. in the fourth dimension, things are seen from within outward, not this way. Second is everything is interconnected and interpenetrating. You can't cut off that now here comes this vital mind, here comes the rational mind. It's okay to understand it. But the greater mind also sends its influx into right down to the physical mind. So you can't see it in a chart, not even on a video projection. So Sri Aurobindo himself about these charts, he has made some charts for his own, joy, because he had seen it. So when he puts it, he knows what he is not put or cannot put. But when this was made, Sri Aurobindo did not encourage it. But it circulates because it's easy to understand. Okay, you locate, start locating everything. But that's not how infinity can ever be understood. If understood, it can be paradox. So he's actually opening us wide through this passage. Forcing wide truth into a narrow scheme. Her numberless warring strict philosophies. Now he's showing us what happens then. Out of nature's body of phenomenon, she carves with thought's keen edge in rigid lines, like rails for the world magician's power to run. Its typical example is nowadays yoga is a technique. And the mother says very beautifully, she says, well, somebody who originally had the experience probably had it in this way. But when he universalizes it and says ki this is the way, say for example, you suddenly, because of a deep aspiration, you suddenly have a vision of the divine being at whatever level, and you are filled with the aha feeling and you fall on your knees and say, ah, wonderful. Now, if you fall on your knees and do this, you are going to see the divine being is absurd. Somebody spoke about the cat doing yoga. Have you heard the story?
No.
Cat doing yoga. No. So there was a Guruji and he had a disciple, and of course he had a cat. So he just kept a cat by the way. Cat is a nice creature. So one day the Guruji, a free person, he said, I want to just go around and look after my cat. It's how dear it is to me. And he said, yes, I know, I have seen you. So the Guruji went away. Now, disciple, all the great things inwardly that he had taught, he couldn't really gather them or practice them. But the cat is tangible. So he had very clearly seen what Guru does to the cat. And he realized that, well, this is the path to salvation. I can't do the inner things. They are very, aspiration, rejection, surrender. I want a fixed process. How to breathe, how many times should I do the mala, how I should sit. So he had seen the cat part. So after 10 years when Guru comes and he looks for his disciple, he has become now a rich man. He says, where is he? So he goes, there is a big festival going on, cat festival. So he goes there and he sees this cat has grown up and he's celebrated and the big cat has come and everybody is praying to the cat. And he says, what's gone wrong with you? He says, you are sacred cat. What about the cat? Every day I would tie this cat the way you used to tie. And every day I would put milk in front of her the way you used to put. And then I would sit the way you used to sit and close my eyes the way you used to do. What did you do after closing the eyes? Is that my mind, roams around, I can't help it. But the cat I looked after faithfully. After some time, people came to me asking for the yoga. They thought I am a holy man. I said, this is the way. So cats became the famous in that place. And all the cats the people started worshipping cats and it became a sacred this thing not to, spoil a cat. And finally, the cat became the deity. Now, yoga is an inner process. You can't help it. It's not a technique. Because you have to pick up from your mind. If one is not conscious about thought and feelings and the psychological subjective space, well, one cannot engage with yoga, as simple as that. Not everybody can become a nuclear scientist. That's simple. But the technique. Now you may do the same technique hundreds of times, but if this aspiration is not there, that's why in synthesis, Sri Aurobindo brings out the essence, aspiration. Aspiration is an intrinsic process. You can aspire while walking on the road. And you may sit with eyes closed, maybe thinking about your house. It doesn't help.
I was with Lakshmi Narayan on his 90th birthday.
Oh, great.
And he said, Mother said to Huta, Ma is meditation.
That's it. So wonderful. So we have this, show me those lines. She carves with thought's keen edge in rigid lines, like rails for the world magician's power to run. That's what allopaths do. They fix that only by this you can cure, but we don't know. Nature acts along many lines. Allopathy is one line through which nature acts. It acts along many lines. Her science is precise and absolute. On the huge bare walls of human nescience, written round nature's deep, dumb hieroglyphs, she pens in clear demotic characters the vast encyclopedia of her thoughts. Then comes grammar. So first is, religion, then sciences and grammar. Rules of grammar, which tries to fix. That's one problem people have with Sri Aurobindo's writings. Savitri. They want to fix rules where there is the free flow of the infinite. And yet there is the rhythm. Now this is the beauty of it. Capture the rhythm, but don't try to fix it. The same thing happens with Sri Aurobindo's prose writings. Mother's music. Is it Eastern? Is it Western? Anybody who has heard it can say it is something which transcends both. Yeah. You can't capture it. It's a freedom of the infinite. But the music is there. The rhythm is there. But the rhythm is not fixed. You fix it in one rhythm and you'll see it breaks free and there is another rhythm which is coming. And you have to follow the pace of that movement. That is evolution. So, but reason can't, that is too much for it. So it tries to fix. So even in grammar, and Sri Aurobindo's usage of words incidentally is very, very plastic. Very plastic. Sometimes he can combine two very commonplace words and there is a very different sense out of it. We have so many in Savitri. We had unsubstantial, which he talks about as something which is almost rigid, fixed. So he uses it in very interesting ways. An algebra of her mathematics, science, her numbers and unerring formulas, she builds to clinch her summary of things. And that's what happened with the earlier interpretation of the Vedas. They fixed the meaning based on modern understanding. But Sri Aurobindo gives the roots of Sanskrit, how the feeling came, then the sound came, then the words came, and then the meaning came. Now we start from the meaning and try to understand the sense. Yeah. But actually it's the state of consciousness which is primary. And that's why in Sri Aurobindo and Mother's writings we have to go deep into the state of consciousness.
Sri Aurobindo uses the word clinch.
Yes.
Which is a very unique word because we clinched a championship.
Yes.
Clinch this.
Now I know it.
Yeah.
That's how it is. And now comes, it's very interesting. On all sides runs as if in a cosmic mosque. Tracing the scriptural verses of her laws, the diddle of her patterned arabesques, like a maze, art of her wisdom, artifice of her lore. This art, this artifice are her only stock. Look at how many suggestions that, he gives here. The art is there, no doubt. It's written very beautifully. And look at the words diddle.
Yes.
You read but at the end of the day, truth has escaped. So he says this is the only stock. Artwork is there. In her high works of pure intelligence, but going beyond reason, going beyond the domain of religion and science, there is philosophy. Not just the roadside philosophy, but profound, deep philosophy. Now he is touching upon that. in her high works of pure intelligence, in her withdrawal from the senses trap. So a philosophy born out of pure thought, not merely based on the senses evidence. There comes no breaking of the walls of mind, there leaps no rending flash of absolute power, there dawns no light of heavenly certitude. At the end of that, still it is a play of probabilities, and you can say agnosticism is the greatest word. Ultimate that reason can lead us is to a healthy agnosticism, I would rather say, which is open. Maybe there is. Let me seek.
But it's interesting that she cannot get above it. She cannot break through.
It cannot. It doesn't have the capacity.
No.
So I often compare reason to maybe a chariot which takes you to the edge of the mountain, from where, if you have to go to the home of God, you have to climb barefoot. You have no choice. If you don't want to take the labor, be rest content there and say, well, I have seen. So reason can take us to that point, and after that it has to hand over to something much deeper, which is faith, or something much higher, which is intuition. These are the two powers which can carry us, and of course behind them the will to seek, the aspiration. Now another thing, a million faces wears her knowledge here, and every face is turbaned with a doubt. I mean, Shivinda has a sense of humor, a wonderful sense of humor. Turbaned with a doubt. You see, he is using this in a very interesting way, because how do you ascend to truth from this brain box where reason has its control? By opening the mind towards greater things. But turban is a symbol that you have fixed it, closed it.
And it's very big.
Very big.
And it blocks everything.
Yeah, so he is comparing it symbolically to doubt.
Yes.
If you really want the ascension, doubt is not the way, faith is the way. You have to open it. You can't fix it into a formula and then put a cap of doubt over it, and then you say that, I have to find the truth. If you have not yet realized the truth, you have to move on with the flame of aspiration and seeking. You cannot stop and say that, well, I have read a book and I have understood it, therefore it is same as discovering. You have to rediscover it. Each one has to make this discovery oneself. There is no shortcut to that. All now is questioned, all reduced to naught. So that's where reason comes in, and once monumental in their massive craft, her old, great, mythic writings disappear, and into their place start strict, ephemeral signs. This constant change spells progress to her eyes. Now this is interesting, that what reason is doing is demolishing. It is deconstructing, and from the material reconstructing, casting out what it cannot accept. That's why you have this postmodernism and this deconstruction of things, which is all right. But the new and the unknown it has no idea about. So even its constructions are not complete, because there is something else out there which it has neither taken into cognizance nor understood. So it deconstructs, breaks open the myth and says, well, this may be a symbol. What people were trying to say is this. Like nowadays you have the interpretations, many interpretations of Mahabharata, Ramayana coming up. So one of them which I was watching the other day, and it's very unfortunate, a man like Devdutt Patnaik, who is otherwise, open, but again the influence of that psychoanalytical school. Interpretation comes along social lines. That, well, that was that society and Sita and Draupadi. You cannot go beyond your limited frame of social understanding of life. But this idea that Rama and Sita and Krishna are actually divine beings changes the whole perspective and narrative. So I was watching some of those episodes, and he's never able to take it, understand that Rama can be a divine soul and Sita represent material nature. And the two must come together, and there are forces which stand in the way, because you have to undertake yoga and actually experience this difficulty. Then you understand, oh, it's so simple and clear. Otherwise you will understand it symbolically only in terms of society. That, well, at the most you will say, well, Rama was a Raja, and so he had to go by the norms of those times, and therefore Sita, which may be a justification, but there is a deeper sense in the whole story. And this is where the flaw of reason comes. It deconstructs and tries to reconstruct, but it misses out that which is the most fundamental, the most essential, the soul and the divine. We have this even in, there are institutes, and nowadays you have yoga. They don't use the word yoga, sometimes they use the word like Indian psychology or yoga psychology, etc. And there are big discussions. In Delhi you have this, sometimes seminars and all this. So I've been there, and I always ask them, ki, you are doing all this, but still there is as if there is a hesitation on using the word divine. Something is there which as if resists. Well, if divine is there, he is there, and if he is true to your experience, how can you deny that? Now it is coming very slowly through the resistance. It's a lot of resistance still. You accept spirituality, but only in a deconstructed postmodern Buddhist frame. But even in Buddha's frame, though there is no Atma, there are many other aspects. There is Dharma, for example, which is not accepted.
But when I met with Dr. Dalal, I posed that question. He says, no, it's not there yet.
It's not there yet. It's, This constant change spells progress to her eyes, this constant breaking and building. Her thought is an endless march without a goal. There is no summit on which she can stand and see in a single glance the infinite soul. So the place he had placed reason was in a narrow house on a region time. So in region time means in the process of evolution, reason has come into play with a purpose. And its house is very narrow, confined to the data of the senses, on which it builds all its hypotheses, the gossamer web and all these things. But all these are just, again, one may say that when it ventures into that domain, again they become fanciful creations, abstractions. We'll stop here, but not before we read the next few lines, because they are very beautiful lines which will set the note.
Yes.
And therefore, after describing all this, an inconclusive play is reason's toil. At the end of the day, with this faculty, you can organize your life. Mother says you should be reasonable. It's very good to organize your life. If I have to chart my day, I must use reason. If I have to plan a trip, I must use reason. But if you say I want to find God by reason, then it's like a faculty which is not meant for that. A hand is meant for eating. Well, people do all kinds of things, slapping. A foot is meant for walking. You can't use the foot for eating unless you are handicapped. So, reason has its place, its office. It is to exercise a certain control over our vital nature, which it does well, is to make us reasonable beings, not to start fretting and fuming and complaining over every little problem, not to revolt and keep complaining, but to try to find rational solutions towards simple things. To an extent, to organize and plan our life, but when it enters into domains which is not it's not meant to enter there. The way to enter into yoga is not reason, but by concentration and meditation on the subject of yoga. So if one wants to really arrive at the divine, one has to concentrate on the divine. That is the power. Even if you don't want to bring in faith and intuition, though they are implicit and inherent in it. When you concentrate and meditate, after a time you begin to identify. And that's how you know it.
Yes.
You can't rationally argue. Each strong idea can use her as its tool. Accepting every brief, she pleads her case. So he knew very well what advocates are like. Whoever gives money, every brief, says, okay, I am going to plead your case. If tomorrow another fellow gives more money, I'll go there. Whereas the purpose of advocate is to make sure justice is done and truth prevails. That it's not meant to argue for and against. Advocates were meant to bring out and therefore present to the judge with facts that they have brought out without fear or favor so that he can decide. So this side advocate has to get the truth from this side, the other side has to get truth from that side, facts, and present them before the court. That would have been so simple. But now the crooked mind has come in. So, oh, you have done the crime, all right, I'll tell you how to wriggle out of it. Make an alibi. So he says it can plead the case. Open to every thought she cannot know. The eternal advocate seated as judge, armors in logic's invulnerable mail. 1,000 combatants for truth's veiled throne, and sets on a high horseback of argument to tilt forever with the wordy lands in a mock tournament where none can win. Like TV debates, where each one goes thinking they have done a good thing, but none can win, because you can take any premise, based on that you can argue in favor or you can argue against it, depending on the premises you choose. You can prove this, you can prove equally the other. This particular line reminds me, as I said, so many suggestions are there.
Oh,
The eternal advocate seated as judge. Even in our system, of course, this is a very profound line, but even in our system, there were two approaches to who will become a judge. One was those who are picked up from this stream. They were advocates and they, were promoted as judge. Another was where jury consisted of prominent citizens whose integrity was beyond doubt. Now, the thing is that they may not know all the arguments and nitty-gritty of the legal framework, technical side. But they were men of integrity, and they had their own ways and means of going toward the heart of the matter. And I think it was a better system. Rather than being promoted, you are so much tuned to technique. You have yourself probably been part of the system. So you can't break free from that. And I have seen sometimes judgment based on purely technical ground, which I have never understood. Judgment based on purely technical grounds. But Sri Aurobindo, takes aside eternal advocate seated as judge. Who can be the judge? Not the advocate, because advocate is somebody who is already tilts this way, that way. He is tuned to that. So many things. This passage we'll read again, because it's from the break and a new movement starts.
and who was the knight in Spain whose assistant was Sancho Panza? Don Quixote,
Yes.
tilting at windmills.
Yes.
He has it all here. 3 lines.
Yes.
High horseback of argument.
Yes.
Tilt forever.
Yes.
In a mock tournament.
Yes. Where none can win. So beautiful and such a joy.